We're going to go ahead and get started. I think we're all here. Start by finding a seat that feels good for you. Just a place where you can land and be able to check in. And you might give a wave to the screen just so you remind yourself that you're all here together. And then find a place for your hands to land, whether that's on your knees or on your body someplace. And then you can either let your eyes close, or maybe you just drop your gaze. And let that trigger the freedom to breathe deeply. And use this moment of breathing deeply to check in with yourself, to check in with where you are on this particular day, to notice where there's any tension, where there's any holding, protecting. And wherever you find that, wherever you notice it, you might direct a little extra breath there, whether it's your shoulder or your hip, your spine, your thoughts. And then your hands might come together, or you could lay a hand across your heart and stack your two palms there. Express a moment of real gratitude. Showing up, for being here. And you can breathe in behind that for the sound of Om. And then your hands can drop away. And you can start to unfold your legs and make your way toward your back. As you're setting that up, have something close by, like a throw pillow that you might use as a pillow. If you've got a sandbag, you can have your sandbag close by. Or maybe it's just another couple of bed pillows that have some weight to them. And they're just within reach to start, so that when you land on your back, give yourself a moment where you can fidget, or you can adjust, where you can settle in. And then you can notice if there's any discomfort around your neck. Any holding, or if the angle is too steep of a drop off for your head to come to the floor. And that might be where you decide to slip the blanket or a pillow or a little piece of foam underneath your head, just to raise it up from the ground a little bit. And then once your head feels settled, you can bring a thigh toward your chest and then bring the other thigh in. And you can windshield wiper a little bit across your sacrum. And then settle into what feels like the middle. And if you have something heavy that you could slip onto your knees, onto your shin bones, like a sandbag or a bed pillow, you could add that there just so it adds a little bit of weight so that you don't feel like you have to hold your legs with your hands or do the work with your leg muscles, but just let your thighs get heavy toward your ribs. Sometimes crossing one ankle over the other will help you just feel like you don't have to do very much. And your arms might open up to a T shape there. Or if it's better, your arms can shift down by your sides or to wherever it works for you. And then come back to your awareness of how you breathe, where you feel your breath. Where you resist, especially if there's some weight on your shins, where you resist that heaviness, where you press it away, and then see if you can really just receive it so that it aids in anchoring you, aids in connecting you to the ground. And perhaps through each one of your exhales, you feel a little bit more of that grounding. This can be the place where you decide to linger and be, and simply focus on your breathing. Or you might add to it and bring your chin toward your chest. Tucking in without lifting your head off the ground, without doing anything extra through the muscles of your shoulders or of your face. We're continuing to breathe fully there. And then if you tucked your chin to your chest, release it back to what feels like neutral. Breathe a few breaths there. And then you might check in with that again and let your chin tuck into your chest. So you feel more length up the backside of your neck. And you feel some subtle engagement through the front and sides of your neck. If this turns up the headache for any reason, Deborah, make sure that you just stay in a place where your head can rest. And then after a few breaths with that tuck in, you can return to neutral. Feel free to keep exploring the simplicity of the chin tuck, or you might add a tiny lift off the ground. So you might tuck your chin into your chest and lift your head a centimeter off the ground. And the thing that you want to pay attention to while you're doing this is if you lost your chin tuck when you lifted your head, because a chin tuck is more important than the lift. And then release if you picked it up. And then after a breath more, you can have that same chin tuck and a little lift off. Notice if you're still breathing, and see if you can continue breathing around your full capacity so you feel your belly expanding and softening. And then release your head if you lifted it. Letting your legs provide some feedback to your abdomen as you breathe. You can do either one of those again, so just the chin tuck by itself, or a chin tuck with a little lift, or it might be a chin tuck when you lift your head enough that you can look through your thighs. And you notice if there's any extra that you're doing. And then if you lifted your head, put it back down. Especially if you're doing a tuck and a lift, notice if you tend to flex your feet. Notice if you tend to pull your thighs more dynamically into your body. See if you can isolate the movement of your head, tucking your chin into your chest, and then lifting your head from there without a lot of other activation. And then you can check it out one more time. So it might be a single chin tuck, or it might be a tuck with a little lift, or it can be a tuck where you look through your thighs. And then release if you lifted. And you can let your head tilt left and right a couple times, looking past your shoulder. One more tilt from side to side. And then center out your head. If you've got anything under your head, slip it out to the side for a moment. Just let your head come down to rest if that works. If your ankles are crossed, feel free to uncross your ankles here. If you've got some weight on your legs, so especially if you have a sandbag that has straps, you can just hold onto the straps. If you've got pillows there, you can kind of brace the pillows into your shins, lift your head off the floor, move your thighs away, and then you might rock and roll a couple times back and forth. And lift your feet up a little bit. And then the next time that you're rocking forward, rock right up to sit. So if you have a sandbag there, it could stay over your shins. Not required, not necessary. And then if you have a bolster or some other pillows, you can bring those into reach. And then with your legs out long in front of you, you can decide how high you want your bolster to set. So it could be on its sort of side edge and just below your knees. And your head can come to the bolster, or maybe that means your forearms go on top of the bolster so that you hinge. Of course, if the bolster needs to go higher, you could, if there's a sandbag, you can put it right on top of the sandbag and then create a little wedge for yourself. So that wherever you set up, you can feel this hinging at your hips that allows you to fold at your hip crease first, and to maintain some length through your spine so that the whole backside of your neck feels relatively neutral. The space between your chin and your chest feels like there's some openness there. It's not going to be 100% open like it would be when you're standing, perhaps, but just so it doesn't feel like the fold is only happening at your neck. Create a higher lift and bigger stack with your forearms so you can experience and experiment with that as well. And then come back to how you're breathing. Notice what's happening at your abdomen. Notice the pace of your breath. And see if you can find a tempo that allows you to feel like you are both leader and follower. And a tempo that you can direct but stay grounded, and one that you can follow, be taken along with. Without feeling like you're being pulled along or taken someplace that isn't right for you. Along the way, if it feels like you want to go a little bit deeper into the fold, you can always adjust your prop or take one away so that there's more hinge at your hips without losing some of the length that you established through your spine. And wherever you are, you might decide to simply breathe here, simply be here, or you might feel as though you were going to sit up, right? So you're not actually going to sit up, but you just have the thought, and then you use about 2% of your effort to move in that direction. So barely perceptible to the eye. Your head stays heavy on whatever it's on, and you just peel up enough that you can feel the skin. For me, it's my forearm skin and my forehead skin, kind of connected but tugging away from each other, so that you feel the backside of your body resisting gravity a little bit. And then fold a little bit deeper, or simply release into the fold again. and see what you notice. And you might do that again where you just anticipate sitting up. You might feel your heels get heavier, your legs and sitting bones get heavier. You might even feel your forehead peel off of whatever it's touching. And then cultivate the length in that moment and fold a little bit deeper, perhaps. Playing with that sense of anticipation in the muscles and in your mind, and how that little resistance against gravity changes your anchor, and then also changes what the shape might feel like. Check in with your jaw. Notice where your tongue is in your mouth. See if you can have a connection between your tongue and your hard palate without any clenching in your jaw. And breathe here a few more times. A few more moments. See if there's one more layer that you could release, one more depth that you could plumb. Last couple of exhales. And then lift your head and float it off of whatever you're on, just high enough to feel the length. And then you can use your hands to walk yourself up to sit. If you have something on your legs, move it over to the side. Give your space a little clearing so that you just have some room to play. And then your sandbag, if you have it, it's going to move off to the side for a moment. And you might watch for a second here. So we've played with some rolling in the past. We're going to have some simple rolling here, but it's not even going to be a full roll. before we begin the roll, when you get down to your back, I want you to see where you're comfortable with your arms. So it might be that you're most comfortable with your arms toward a T, or maybe more of a cactus, or see if there's some V shape. And any of those places is totally great. That'll be step one, okay? After you do that, one hand will come to your heart. So that's my left hand coming onto my heart. And then once it's there, I'm going to turn my head to look at my right thumb and just move in that direction. Just so enough, I'm on my right arm, on my right hip, but I'm not really rolling all the way onto my belly. And then I'll reverse that by looking up at the ceiling and flipping back onto my back. Then my right hand will come. I'll look over to my left hand and roll in that direction, right? That might be the work. Or if you've got something small and heavy that you can add into your roll, I'm going to put the sandbag against my chest. It just adds a little bit of extra guidance so that when I lift my head and see my hand, I can really let the sandbag take me. And then I'll work against the gravity of that and the weight to go back, right? And you can stay with one arm the whole time, but just to see the other side, I can hook in there, see where I want to roll, and roll there. What I'm not doing in that roll is taking my leg up and over and letting it take me, right? I'm really letting my upper body lead, okay? So whatever works in your space and works for you, start by simply lying down and seeing if it's possible, seeing if it works, seeing if it feels okay to have your arms wide, maybe a T, maybe a cactus, maybe a V shape. And happily stay here and let this be your experience. Or you can take your left forearm onto your chest, look over to your right thumb, and roll part of the way there. Roll again onto your back by reversing and seeing the ceiling. And then your right forearm can rest on your chest. Lift your head to look and see your left thumb. Let that roll you onto your left hip. And then look toward the ceiling to unravel the roll. And then you can go side to side or stick with one arm at a time and do several. See where you want to go and go. See where you want to return and return. See where you want to go and go. See where you want to return and drop. And then play in and out of that as many times as you like. You can always add a sandbag or something. It doesn't have to be very heavy at all, really. As long as it fits into the space and doesn't become cumbersome to hold on to it, right? You can tuck it in there and let it guide you. And then you work against it to make your way back. And you can stick to that one side. So it goes eyes first, and then your head follows, and then your body follows. Mm-hmm. And notice how your legs kind of end up in a bit of a scissor when you get to your side, Josie. So when you go to your side this time, notice your legs and let your top leg feel like it can just slide back a little bit. So your top leg, top leg, top leg. But keep it long and let it slide backward in space some. So that when you go back onto your back, your legs are already somewhat separated. So now when you're rolling over to your right, feel how your left leg can stretch backward a little bit. Left leg back a little bit, Josie. There's a tiny hint of rotation. playing in and out of it your way, as much or as little as you like. A few more times in each direction, whether that's switching or doing one at a time. Starting to think about finishing up. So if you need to do the other arm to roll, make sure that you even yourself out a little bit. And then eventually start to find your way onto your back. And take a moment just resting there on your back. Feel the effects of rolling. Notice what you notice. Good. And then you're going to set yourself up with if you have a bolster, you can start with it behind your thighs, behind your knees as you rest on the floor. And that just gives you a sense of where it is. So I like to take my legs over it and then pull it close into my bum. So it's really very close to your butt creases. And then step your feet up on top so that you know that when you get your feet on top, the bend of your knee is going to be fairly deep, and make adjustments as you need along the way. And then once you get here, step your feet a little bit wider. So maybe you can feel the edges of the bolster underneath your pinky toes. Press your feet into the floor or into your bolster, into your pillow, and just shift your hips a little bit over to the right. And once that's happened, start to let your knees drift over to the left. So there's still some space between your legs, so that when your legs start to drop left, you can adjust again, so that you're thinking about supporting your lower leg. So on my left side, I can really feel the bolster supporting my outer left shin, a little bit of my left ankle. And then on my right side, I can really feel the bolster supporting my inner right shin. My foot kind of dangles off, and that may or may not be the case for you. But there's space between my thighs. Both knees have dropped left. And then you can open your arms toward a T shape. So you have this little bit of rotation across your lower spine. Right? So from right at the level of your diaphragm down toward your pelvis, there's this little twist happening. And that can be where you land, or once you've settled in, you can turn your head to the right. So that your head is moving opposite your knees. And if you turn your head that way and find that it's more than what your neck would like, come back to center, be where you need to be on your head. As you settle into the twist, notice where you do more work than you need to do. Also notice where you hold and resist. Perhaps there's more lift, more propping that you could add to your twist so that you feel as though you can let go. Or maybe it's just the noticing that there's a holding and resisting that will allow you to let go. That might mean that you adjust your positioning and find a new way to let go into the shape once you've turned off that extra work. Notice that in this twist, there's a lot of room for your belly. Capitalize on that space that's available. Without ever feeling as though you're overdoing it. Yeah? So you breathe to your capacity, and the moment you feel tension around your neck or tension in your jaw, or tension at your tongue, know that perhaps that was a bigger breath than you needed. Melting into the turns and twists in your spine. Stay for a bit longer. Last couple of breaths here. And then if your head is off to the right, start to bring it back into center. You can let your feet connect into the bolster one at a time to center out your knees, to even out your hips. Pause there as long as you like. Then eventually you can press your feet against the floor or your bolster your hips drift a little bit to the right. And then your knees can start to fall. We just did that side. Move your hips over to the left. And then your knees can drop over to the right. And playing with how you land there. Yeah, so your knees are going right this time. And the two sides usually feel pretty different. So Josie, you can put a little bit more space between your feet and a little bit, yeah. So that when your knees go over to the right, there's some real space between them. Yeah. And then you might keep your head centered or test the rotation of your head to the left a couple times. And then perhaps it rests over to the left side. And then go through that same experience of noticing what you're experiencing. Where you might be working more than you need to work. Are you resisting, guarding, protecting? And if there's something that wants more support, right, give it to it. Or lift. And then you might find that as you let go of any extra work, let go of any holding, that the twist takes on a different kind of depth. Move and adjust how you need when that shows up for you. Notice also when you start to check out. When your attention is moved on from your breath, can you come back to it? Notice if there's any anticipation here of moving on to the next thing. And see if you can be completely in this moment for just a few more breaths. Good. If your head is off to the left side, bring it back slowly to center. And draw your left leg over toward your right leg, so both knees stack a little bit more. And then let both knees pull closer to your right arm. Your head can roll to the right. Your left arm comes along so that you're on your right side in a little fetal shape. Good. And then you can use your top hand to help you come up to sit. You can move your bolster out of the way. And then come on up to sit. So it could mean that for you, having a little thin folded blanket underneath your sitting bones might make sitting feel more comfortable. And then stretch out your legs so that they're long and slightly wide. Right? And this might be the place to be. Right? If you have a sandbag, just have it in reach. And then from this seated position, I want you to, most of you are looking right toward the screen, but if you can look past the screen or look or change your position so you can find something on the wall or out in front of you where you can really fix your gaze on it so that your head is fixed on that one thing. And you can have your hands on your knees if you're moving on with me and lean forward in a way that your eyes don't change on that thing. So it opens up the angle of your throat. And then go the opposite. So you lean back a little bit so that by the time you've leaned back, you've closed the angle on your throat. And you lean forward, and your throat and chest have some openness. And you lean back, and your chin closes in. Right? And then you can continue with that, and a little bit goes a long way. So you don't have to go very far forward or very far back. You're just going forward of where you started and back from where you started. And there'll be some little moments of activity in your feet, but try to let them go along with things rather than directing traffic. Right? And you'll notice as you do it that there's some action happening in your belly, action happening in your chest, action happening across your back, right? So you can feel yourself almost like you're falling forward and you're keeping open, and you're falling backward and you're keeping protected, kind of tucking into yourself. And then pause for a moment. So it could be that you do that a little bit more. I'm going to turn so you can see. Or you can have that same setup and go side to side. So you can lean over to one side. And remember, your eyes are fixed on something, and you lean over to the other side. So the whole time, you want it to feel as though your head is vertical. So Maddie, watch out for tilting your head. Your head stays fixed on that thing. And it might be interesting, for me, I've brought my index finger up to my nose bridge, and I can just hold it there. And that kind of keeps me true. So I'm using the side of my hand. Yeah. And then going side to side. It kind of keeps me oriented to the idea that I'm not twisting or turning, but as I tilt from one side to the other, I can feel how one ear naturally gets closer to one shoulder. So if I'm leaning to my right, my left ear and my left shoulder get closer together. If I lean to my left, my right ear and my right shoulder get closer together. That's it, Josie. Good, and then center yourself out for a moment. So it could be that you work back and forth that way or side to side that way, or you could take it around in a bit of a circle. So you're still moving through all of those places. Nothing has changed with how your head behaves. So you still want your head to sit on top of this moving spiral. of your body. Your body's moving underneath your head. And if you lose that sense of your head sitting on top, go back to one of the earlier ideas. If that idea feels pretty good in your body, you could cradle anything that's a little bit heavy across your chest. So I've got my sandbag to my chest, and I can go forward and back. So I open my throat, and then my chin tucks into my throat. I could do that side to side. Or I could have that full circle. And with the added weight, it probably means not rolling as far back. Just a few more times there. If you're taking circles, make sure that you change the direction of your circle. Seeing if your gaze is still fixed on that spot that you set it on. Good. And then still the movement. If you've got something heavy, you can drop it off to the side. If you've got something underneath your hips, you can pull that out from underneath. And then you're going down to your back again. And if you have a block, you can have that at the ready, so that when you recline back, start with the soles of your feet flat. And you could use anything that's sturdy. So if it's not a block, maybe it's a couple of books. And then you can lift your hips so that you put your sacrum across the block. So it could be the low height of your block, it could be the medium height of your block. It's usually closer to your butt muscle than you think, so that from there you can decide if you keep your knees bent or if you stretch your legs out long. So you open up the front side of your hip. So that seated position that you were just in, you feel how your abdominals get involved in that experience. And also your hip flexors are in that experience. So opening up, supported, somewhat passive back bend. If there's any tightness or tensing in your low back, feel free to lower the block a notch. Or perhaps bend your knees wherever you can make it feel more like you can let go into it. We won't be here for a super long time, not for this shape. As you get settled into it, you might just think about your breastbone dropping back into your spine a little bit. There's some heavier weight through your shoulder girdle. Sometimes laying your hands right at the front side of your hip points, palms down. You can give them the okay, the permission to open away from each other a little bit, or smooth down from your belly over that hip point toward your leg, encouraging that space. And just a few more breaths. So let's say 3 more rounds of breathing. And then when you're ready, you can let one knee bend so one foot flattens. You can do that with the other side. Keep that sense of your breastbone pressing back into your spine. Notice the reaction that happens and the response through your low back. So you can press into your feet and feel your tailbone curling into your pubic bone. So you just have enough power in your feet and legs to lift off the block. And then crease your hips deeper so you can lower your butt muscle down to the floor. Good. Take a moment. And then you can roll to your side and make your way onto all fours. So if you have a sandbag, you can bring it in. Not required, but anything will work, right? So from your all fours, if you're able to sit back on your heels, sit back that way, and then I'm going to take my sandbag and just hold it behind my back long enough that I can then transition back onto all fours. So it's really sitting, the heaviest part of it, sitting in my mid back. And then I can tug the strap so that the heavier bit gets closer to my lumbar spine. So that when I settle in, I can allow my belly to soften. I can allow the curvature in my lumbar spine to be there, but then I'm going to respond to that and take my gaze forward. Right? And forward doesn't necessarily mean that you lift your head a lot, but it does mean picking your gaze up from the floor so you can feel the continuation of that sweep. So this is a great place just to be in this all fours position, breathing and allowing your belly to soften when you breathe in, and exhale when you breathe, draw in a little bit when you exhale, right? So not doing any shape changing through your back. So if you're staying here, stay here, or you can have a little bit of micro crawling in space. So I'm going to move my right hand and my left knee forward an inch, and then pull that back. And my left knee and my right hand forward an inch, and then back. And then I can move in and out of that, all with the remembering that there's some softness to my lumbar, and that my gaze is forward. And you can keep the forward and back, or if forward and back feels familiar, then you can move laterally. So I can move my left knee and my right hand to the left. And then I can come back into center. And then I can move my left hand and my right knee to the right. And then back to center. This lateral crawling. Good. Last little bit. Good. And then settle to all fours. And then if you've got something on your back, you can just move your hips backward toward your heels and let it slide down behind your tush. Move it away. And then you're lying back on your back. And then you can have, if you have a sandbag, you can have it close by. You can have a block close by. Close by, right? So that when I get down here, I'm kind of ready to make my choices. The idea is you're going to move to your legs being vertical to the sky, and that might mean that you use a block under your hips to do that. Before I put the block underneath, I'm going to pull my sandbag onto my belly, so I can then bend my knees toward my chest and hook the sandbag onto my soles, right? So always when you're using a sandbag or something heavy, take your time. And this could be done with a bed pillow for sure. And then I can stretch my legs up so they feel mostly vertical. And then from there, I'm going to take the block, I'm going to press into my elbows, let my legs get a little heavier toward my ribs and belly, and slip my block underneath my sacrum so that my legs are vertical. And then I can open my arms out toward a T. Maybe it's more of a cactus shape with your arms. Maybe your arms reach overhead if there's comfort in your shoulders to do that. In this inversion moment, Viparita Karani. Returning to a full breath in if you lost it along the way. Feel free to tilt and move your head. Spending just a few more moments here, knowing that you can move out of it sooner than I do. Knowing that the next thing from here will be rest. So if your arms are stretched overhead, you can start to bring them more toward a cactus or a T. If you've got sandbag up on your feet. You can bend your knees, step one foot out, free the other foot so the sandbag can come down to your belly. Lift your hips slowly off a block if it's there. Drop your hips down. And then you can stretch your legs out long. And the sandbag can stay at your belly. It can move down to your hips. If you prefer to rest some other way, rest some other way. And then begin to let go of all the doing. Of anything that's extra. Still with an awareness of your breath and your breathing, but not needing to direct it. Not needing to do anything specific in this moment. Seeing what other layers can drop away. And then you can start to take a deeper, fuller breath wherever you are. And begin to move a little bit at your fingers or at your feet. And bend at your knees. And roll to your side and find your way up to sit. And then perhaps your hands rest on your body, your belly, and your breastbone. Or maybe there's a prayer. And then breathe in. Oh. We are one life, we are one light, and we are one love. It's with gratitude that I bow, honoring the divine in you. Thanks for showing up.